If you dropped the average modern person into the medieval world for just 3 days, they wouldn't survive. Not because people back then were bigger or smarter, but because their minds were built differently. The medieval world was brutal. Disease could wipe out a town in weeks. Wars started over pride. Trust could get you killed. And yet, people survived. Some even thrived. Because they understood psychological truths that modern society tries to hide. Lessons about power, about fear, about human nature. Lessons that can make you mentally stronger, if you're willing to hear them. Most people won't, because these ideas are uncomfortable. But if you're still watching, you're probably not like most people. So here are 7 dark medieval lessons that can harden your mind in ways modern advice never will. Lesson 1. Fear is a tool, not an enemy. Modern culture teaches you to avoid fear. Be positive. Stay comfortable. Protect your peace. Medieval people didn't have that luxury. Fear was everywhere. A knock on the door at night could mean soldiers. A cough could mean plague. A stranger could be a thief. But instead of pretending fear didn't exist, they used it. Knights trained until exhaustion because fear reminded them that weakness meant death. Merchants locked their doors and carried weapons because fear told them the truth about the world. Fear wasn't weakness. Fear was information. It was the brain's warning system saying, "Pay attention. Something here matters." But modern society trains people to numb that signal. They distract themselves, scroll endlessly, seek comfort. Meanwhile, the people who succeed in brutal environments, entrepreneurs, fighters, leaders, do something different. They listen to fear. They ask, "Why am I afraid of this? What is this emotion trying to show me?" Fear can reveal risks, hidden enemies, your own weaknesses. In the medieval world, ignoring fear could get you killed. Today, ignoring it just makes you blind. Lesson 2. Trust slowly. Humans haven't changed. The medieval world had a brutal rule. Trust was earned slowly and broken instantly. Alliances between kings collapsed overnight. Friends betrayed each other for land, gold, or survival. Even family members poisoned rivals to gain power. It sounds extreme, but human nature hasn't changed nearly as much as we like to believe. People still compete for status, still lie to protect themselves, still betray when incentives are strong enough. The difference is that modern society pretends otherwise. We're told everyone is basically good, that trust should be automatic, that suspicion is negativity. Medieval people knew better. They didn't assume loyalty. They observed behavior over time. Who keeps promises? Who breaks them when convenient? Who changes when power appears? This mindset protected them from manipulation, and it still works today, because the strongest people don't become cynical, but they also don't become naive. They trust carefully, they watch patterns, and they remember a simple medieval truth. Words reveal intentions, but actions reveal character. In the medieval world, misunderstanding human nature could cost you everything. And the next lesson is even darker. Lesson 3. Respect power, even when you don't like it. In medieval kingdoms, moral arguments didn't protect you. Power did. A weak noble with good intentions could lose everything overnight. A powerful rival could take land, titles, even lives. So people learned a simple psychological rule: never ignore power dynamics. Who actually controls the situation? Who has influence over others? Who can change outcomes? Medieval merchants understood this when negotiating with lords. Knights understood it on the battlefield. Advisors understood it inside royal courts. They didn't just ask what was right. They asked who had the power to decide what becomes right. Modern people often avoid thinking this way. It feels cynical. But ignoring power doesn't eliminate it. It only makes you vulnerable to those who understand it. Strong minds learn to read power quietly. They observe. Who speaks and everyone listens? Who makes decisions behind the scenes? Who benefits when things go wrong? Because once you see power clearly, you stop walking blindly into traps. Lesson 4. Comfort weakens the mind. Medieval life was harsh. Cold winters, hard labor, constant uncertainty. But that hardship created something modern comfort often destroys: mental resilience. When survival required effort every day, people developed a stronger tolerance for stress. They endured discomfort without panic. They adapted faster. They solved problems because they had no choice. Now compare that to modern life. A delayed flight feels like a crisis. A negative comment online ruins someone's day. Minor inconvenience becomes emotional chaos. Why? Because constant comfort makes the brain fragile. The mind becomes used to ease, and when real pressure appears, it struggles. Medieval people didn't seek suffering for its own sake, but they understood something powerful. Hardship trains the mind. It teaches patience, focus, endurance. Even today, the strongest individuals deliberately expose themselves to controlled discomfort. They train harder, work longer, face difficult challenges voluntarily. Not because it's pleasant, but because it builds the psychological armor that comfort slowly erodes. Lesson 5. Reputation was survival. In the medieval world, reputation wasn't just social status. It was survival currency. If people believed you were weak, dishonest, or unreliable, doors closed. Allies disappeared. Enemies moved closer. But if your reputation carried strength, if people believed you were disciplined, capable, and dangerous when necessary, life became easier. Conflicts ended faster. Deals happened more smoothly. Opportunities appeared. This is why knights defended honor so fiercely, why merchants guarded their names, why rulers punished insults harshly, because reputation shaped how others treated you before anything even happened. And the same invisible rule still exists today. People constantly evaluate signals. Do you follow through? Do you tolerate disrespect? Do you keep your word? These patterns slowly form your reputation, and once it solidifies, it begins working for you or against you. Medieval survivors understood this deeply. They knew every action was a message to the world about who they were. But the final lessons may be the most uncomfortable of all. Because medieval thinkers also understood something about loneliness, strength, and independence that modern society rarely talks about. Lesson 6. Independence is the ultimate security. In the medieval world, depending too much on others was dangerous. Kings could fall, allies could betray, cities could burn. If your survival depended entirely on someone else's protection, you were vulnerable. So the smartest survivors cultivated independence. Knights trained to fight even if abandoned. Merchants learned multiple trades in case one failed. Travelers carried tools, weapons, and knowledge that allowed them to survive alone if necessary. This mindset created psychological strength. Because when you know you can stand on your own, your fear of losing others decreases. You become harder to manipulate, harder to intimidate. Modern society often pushes the opposite message, that safety comes from relying on systems, institutions, groups. But systems fail. Institutions change. Groups turn against outsiders. The strongest minds today adopt the same mentality medieval survivors had. Learn skills, build resilience, reduce dependency wherever possible. Not because you want to be alone, but because true cooperation only happens when people don't need each other to survive. That's when relationships become choices, not chains. Lesson 7. The crowd is usually wrong. Medieval history is full of moments where the majority believed something completely false. Entire populations blamed plagues on the wrong causes. Crowds supported rulers who later destroyed their own kingdoms. Mass hysteria spread quickly because people followed what everyone else believed. But a small minority always existed. Observers, thinkers, strategists, people who stepped back and asked, "What if the crowd is mistaken?" These individuals often survived when others didn't, because they questioned popular assumptions. They looked for evidence instead of approval. They made decisions based on reality, not consensus. And the same pattern repeats today. Crowds panic. Crowds follow trends. Crowds believe what feels good. But strength often comes from resisting that pull. It requires the willingness to think independently, even when that means standing apart. Because the crowd offers comfort, but clarity usually lives outside of it. The medieval world was brutal. War, disease, betrayal, hardship. But it also forced people to develop psychological toughness that modern comfort rarely produces. They learned to use fear instead of avoiding it, to trust carefully, to understand power, to embrace hardship, to guard their reputation, to build independence, and to question the crowd. These lessons may sound dark, but darkness often reveals truths that comfort hides. Most people prefer the comfortable story. But if you've watched this far, you probably understand something the crowd doesn't. Mental strength isn't built in safety. It's built by facing reality, no matter how uncomfortable it is.